Back in the day, the Ed Sullivan Show was one of the best ways for musical artists to make it into the public eye. Memorably, artists like the Beatles and Elvis made iconic debuts on the program, and there are numerous others who can be said to have made their breakout performances on the show. But for every artist who was willing to play by host Ed Sullivan's decidedly conservative rules, there were others who caught Ed's ire for refusing to bow. From Jim Morrison to Bo Diddley, join Factsverse as we take a look at celebrities banned from the Ed Sullivan Show. When the Ed Sullivan Show was on the air, it was the ultimate vehicle for musical acts to be seen. Many, including the Beatles and Elvis Presley, first broke out into the public eye thanks to their performances on the program. But host Ed Sullivan was known to be fairly strict about the kind of behavior he allowed to be shown on his show. While most musical acts were willing to abide by Ed's strict rules to be seen by so many TV viewers, there were others who didn't take so kindly to the host's demands. Ed Sullivan was always somewhat stoic compared to his contemporaries and didn't always have the easiest time taking a joke. The talk show host was also incredibly conservative, even for his time, and it was clear to most guests on the program beforehand there were going to be things about their image they were going to have to change if they wanted to appear on the show. Despite this, fans adored the host, and most guests were willing to play ball for the attention. Besides the Beatles and Elvis Presley, other guests who came to prominence thanks to appearances on The Ed Sullivan Show include Fred Astaire and the Jackson 5. However, for every one of those acts, there were others who weren't willing to bend their integrity to fit in with Ed's vision. Even though most of these acts went on to achieve great fame, most of them ended up being banned from Ed's show for good. One musical act who infamously caught the ire of host Ed Sullivan was the Rolling Stones. When the Stones first showed up to perform, Ed Sullivan was immediately taken aback by the boys' scraggly appearances. He famously asked all the band members to wash their hair and change their clothes, regardless of the fact that their unkempt demeanor is part of what has always made them stand out to their fans. Besides Ed Sullivan not taking kindly to their appearance, he also requested them to change one of the lyrics to their songs, which was a common practice on The Ed Sullivan Show. Mick Jagger ended up obeying Ed's command as far as the song lyric, which saw him singing "Let's Spend Some Time Together" instead of "Let's Spend the Night Together." Although Mick made sure to roll his eyes prominently enough for the audience to notice, Ed Sullivan felt the boys had at least made an effort. Although he didn't have much respect for the musical act, he deigned to let them come back onto the program 5 subsequent times. The Stones may have allowed their distaste for Ed's conservatism to be seen, but they ended up playing by the rules and doing the host right. Many other rebellious acts, including The Doors and Bob Dylan, showed a bit more integrity when asked by the producers to compromise their image. The Doors were invited onto The Ed Sullivan Show to perform their song "Light My Fire," which memorably contains the lyrics, "Girl, we couldn't get much higher." The producers knew this lyric was an allusion to drug use, and they asked singer Jim Morrison to change the lyrics to "Girl, we couldn't get much better." Jim made like he was going to follow the instructions, but decided to sing the original lyric anyways once the show was being filmed. Because it was live, there was nothing Ed could do besides ban the musical act. When the Doors were told they weren't going to be allowed back onto The Ed Sullivan Show, they didn't care. According to them, they had already gotten all the exposure they needed from the host via the one performance, and this proved right. Hey, if you're enjoying this video so far, be sure to give it a like and subscribe to Factsverse for more, and stick around for more banned bands from The Ed Sullivan Show. The Doors had subsequent appearances on The Ed Sullivan Show lined up to come after their first, but those were canceled. The episode featuring the Doors had also cut to commercial early after their musical performance, notably eschewing the tradition of Ed shaking the musical guests' hands. Another musical guest who caught the wrath of Ed Sullivan was Bo Diddley. When Bo Diddley was scheduled to perform on The Ed Sullivan Show, he had prepared to perform his namesake song, the aptly titled hit Bo Diddley. Immediately before it was time for Bo to give his performance on the program, Ed asked him to perform a different song instead. Apparently, Ed asked Bo to perform 16 Tons, which is a song made famous by Tennessee Ford. Like the Doors did later, Bo seemed to agree to Ed's terms, only to revert to his original plan once the cameras were rolling. Bo played his namesake song despite the host's wishes, and the legend was never allowed back. After Bo's musical performance, Ed made a distasteful remark about the rock legend that unwarrantedly called attention to his race. Bo Diddley didn't much care for the remark, and it's possible he would have refused the opportunity to come back even if he was allowed. Like the Doors experienced, Bo's career didn't suffer much from his feud with Ed Sullivan, with the legendary guitarist and singer still being considered one of the preeminent rock and roll musicians of his time. Buddy Holly is another musician who caught the wrath of Ed. Buddy had already appeared on the show with his band, The Crickets, before his infamous second appearance. Apparently, Buddy and his band hadn't taken kindly to Ed's request they change one of their scheduled songs. When Ed grew aware of the band's bad attitude, he decided he would sabotage their performance. He did this by cutting their set down from one song to two, mispronouncing Buddy Holly's name, and turning his guitar mic off. Despite Ed's attempt to sabotage Buddy Holly's second appearance, the appearance ended up being a success in the eyes of audiences. Ed reluctantly agreed to let Buddy come back onto the show, but Buddy told producers he wasn't interested. According to Buddy Holly, there wasn't enough money in the world to entice him back onto the Ed Sullivan Show. Bob Dylan is another musician who caught the wrath of Ed Sullivan and never came back. Bob was asked to change one of the songs he was set to perform. He had initially been planning on performing the song Talking John Birch Paranoid Blues, but had been asked by an executive at CBS to change the song choice after one of the episode's rehearsals. Instead of having to make the choice, Bob Dylan made the respectable decision to simply bow out of the performance, requiring Ed to struggle to fill Bob's slot at that last minute. Bob was subsequently never invited back onto the Ed Sullivan Show, though it's doubtful if he would have ever wanted to return. Not every guest that caught Ed's ire was a musical act. The Ed Sullivan Show also featured plenty of comedians, and one who rubbed Ed the wrong way was Jackie Mason. Jackie had been a guest on the program many times before the one that led to him being banned. Jackie was performing one night in 1964 when it was made apparent to him by Ed himself that his performance was about to be cut short to make room for a broadcast from then-President of the U.S., Lyndon Johnson. When Ed gave a hand signal to Jackie, telling him his time was almost up, Jackie gave a hand signal back that Ed apparently thought was an inappropriate gesture. This led to Ed temporarily banning the beloved comedian from his staple show, though he was eventually welcomed back onto the program after apologizing. According to Jackie, the incident had been a misunderstanding and his hand signal had not been meant to cause offense. Now it's time to hear from you. Did you know the Doors were banned from performing on The Ed Sullivan Show? Let us know in the comments section below. And before you go, make sure you give this video a like and subscribe to Factsverse if you haven't already. Click the bell icon to stay updated on all our latest content.